Heartwarming love letters discovered. Lonely librarian's incredible journey to a billionaire's heart. Sarah Parker, in her late 30s, was a familiar face in the quaint Midwestern town of Maplewood. Every night as the sun dipped behind the horizon, she roamed between the towering shelves of the public library, breathing in the comforting scent of old pages. This was her sanctuary. Among the whispers of history, she found solace, a refuge from her own lonely life. But one fateful evening, everything changed when she stumbled upon a dusty box tucked away in a forgotten corner. Her heart raced as she carefully pried it open, revealing a treasure trove of romantic letters, their edges frayed and sealed with worn-out wax. Each envelope cradled heartfelt exchanges, the ink slightly fading but still filled with emotions that leaped off the page. As she read, she was swept into a poignant love story, one that resonated with her own desire for connection. Two lovers separated by class and circumstance poured their souls into words that survived the test of time, echoing struggles that felt all too familiar to her. Sarah wiped a tear from her eye. She understood their longing, their fears. Their love story was a gentle reminder of the sacrifices made for a better life. The library was not just a building. It was a monument to dreams, hopes, and shared experiences, all of which she desperately fought to protect. She stepped back, the weight of the letters heavy in her heart. News broke like lightning through a calm sky. Jack Johnson, a wealthy billionaire from the neighboring city, planned to bulldoze her beloved library for a luxury development. The townsfolk gasped, the air thick with fear and indignation. How could someone with so much power take away their cherished space? Sarah felt the rallying cries build around her as she gathered her neighbors. Veterans, single parents, lifelong residents. Together, they formed a coalition determined to fight this injustice. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their first fundraising event at the library bristled with energy and unexpected encounters. Sarah found herself face to face with Jack, whose presence loomed large, filled with an air of confidence that made her heart flutter and her mind race. They exchanged words, sharing their hopes and fears, clashing and colliding in a dance of misunderstanding. Beneath the surface, she could sense his own longings, a struggle for connection stifled by privilege. Yet, each attempt to bridge the gap caused unease in her soul. Tensions boiled during a pivotal town hall meeting. Voices rose and fell, the air thick with raw emotions, echoing the townspeople's passion for their history. Sarah, trembling but brave, recounted her own painful past, revealing vulnerabilities that struck a chord with everyone present. In that moment of vulnerability, Jack seemed to soften, a flicker of understanding in his gaze. But could their fragile connection withstand the storm brewing around them? Just when it seemed a glimmer of hope appeared that Jack might reconsider his plans, an anonymous letter surfaced, one that painted Sarah in a vulnerable light, threatening to shatter the bonds built in the name of mutual respect. As the community wrestled with these emotions, Sarah's heart ached, painfully aware of her own longing for connection in a world that felt increasingly divided. Would she find redemption in the midst of chaos? And could Jack truly change his path? The fate of the library hung on a thread, trembling like their hearts, setting the stage for an unfolding story of love, struggle, and the chance for a new beginning. As the storm clouds gathered over Maplewood, Sarah sat alone in her library, her fingers trembling against the rough edges of the letters. The once comforting atmosphere felt heavy with uncertainty. The anonymous letter had shaken the foundations of her fight, and made her question her standing in the eyes of the very community she had fought so hard for. Would they still rally behind her? Her heart sank at the thought. With Jack Johnson's powerful influence looming over them, she felt like a lone candle flickering in the wind, fragile and at risk of being extinguished. That night, sleep was elusive, her mind churning with possibilities. She replayed the town hall meeting, Jack's softening gaze, their brief connection. What did it mean? Could he be different from the others in his world? Or was he just playing a role to keep her on his side? Doubt gnawed at her, twisting her insides like a taut wire. Donning her librarian persona the next day, Sarah tried to maintain balance. She organized stacks of books, hoping that immersing herself in the familiar would calm her turbulent emotions. But every hushed whisper from patrons felt like a reminder of her vulnerability. Children laughed and a group of teens joined a discussion about a fundraiser. Though a shadow hung over the excitement as the hours passed, Sarah caught sight of Jack through the library windows. He was there, standing in the parking lot with a few of his wealthy friends. They whispered and laughed, pointing her way, and her heart raced. She couldn't face him again. Not after that letter. But as he turned to leave, something grabbed at her heart, a flicker of hope amidst despair. Sarah. A soft voice broke through her thoughts. It was Clara, her best friend and neighbor, who had always been supportive. I saw him today. He looked lost, she said, leaning against the shelf. You have to talk to him. Clara, how can I? The letter, what everyone thinks. Sarah's voice cracked with the weight of shame and fear. They'll understand once you explain, Clara insisted. You have their support, and they love you for who you are. And let us not forget, Jack isn't all bad. He is human too. Just then, a bolt of determination surged within Sarah. She couldn't let fear dictate her life any longer. Especially not when so much was at stake. Love letters decades old had shown her what true vulnerability looked like. If those two lovers could bare their souls without fear of the consequences, surely she could step into the light and share her truth. And a sudden moment of clarity, she strode out toward Jack. The gravel crunched beneath her heels, each step resonating with indignation and hope. As she approached, the laughter faded. Jack looked up, surprise evident in his deep blue eyes, a mix of confusion and curiosity swirling within them. Sarah, he said almost carefully. I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to be here either, Sarah replied, heart racing, bravery lining every word. But we need to talk about everything. Jack nodded. The amusement of his friends vanished, replaced by a palpable tension. The weight of their unspoken connection loomed between them, a battle yet to be waged. As the sun dipped below the horizon, illuminating their faces in a warm golden hue, Sarah took a breath and prepared to reveal her heart. She had no idea how he would react, but something told her this was the moment that could change everything. But what she didn't expect was the surprise waiting for her in Jack's next words. Sarah, I've been meaning to talk to you, Jack started, his voice surprisingly deep, charged with a level of seriousness that sent shivers down her spine. About the letter. Isn't what you think. Her heart raced at his words, a mix of confusion and dread flooding her. What do you mean? It's not about what I think, it's about what was written. It's a threat. A warning. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks. You of all people should understand how they perceive you. Jack's gaze softened, shifting from confusion to something more sincere. I know what people think of me, and I know it's easy to judge from the outside. But I'm not that person, not anymore. His admission hung heavy in the air, his breath visibly steadying as he searched her eyes. You? Sarah blinked, wondering what he was getting at. Then why does it feel like you're always playing the part they expect? You laugh at their jokes. You stand among them like you belong. He stepped closer, the heat of their shared vulnerability shifting the space. Because I do belong. That's the problem, he admitted. We're two worlds apart, and every time I tell myself to step away I get pulled back in. You make me want out, but I don't know how. Her expression softened as she sensed the conflict brewing inside him. Here stood Jack Johnson, a name that echoed power, yet she realized he carried his own burdens, hidden beneath the glamour of his life. You need to decide who you want to be, Jack. Surrounding yourself with that crowd won't transform you. His jaw tightened as he released a slow breath. And distancing myself from you isn't the answer either. Their eyes locked, and a wave of understanding rippled through her. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside her heart. A desire to understand Jack's struggle, but the fear of losing herself in the process. Then let us figure it out together, she said softly, the words escaping her lips as more of a plea than a statement. Let me show you my world. I want you to understand why this matters so much. A flicker of appreciation sparkled in his eyes. With a faint smile, the tension shifted into a tentative hope. Are you sure? People will talk. Even more than they already have. Let them, she replied boldly, feeling the embers of courage stoke within her. I'm fighting for something worth fighting for. Anyone else who judges me is missing the point. In that moment she saw a new determination in his gaze. A commitment not only to himself but to her and the community they stood to help. The world felt a little brighter, the storm clouds outside seeming to peel back just enough to let the sunlight break through. Then let us do this, he agreed, his voice stronger now, carrying the weight of promise. Together. As they turned to walk back into the library, shadows fell behind them, yet the future seemed to shimmer with potential. But just as they entered the building, the door swung open, revealing a figure they both recognized. Clara's excited voice sliced through the charged air. You won't believe what I just found out. Sarah and Jack paused, their eyes wide with anticipation, caught at the threshold of revelation. What Clara had to say could change everything they had just vowed to embrace. Come on, Clara urged, her expression electrified. You have to hear this. It's about the letter. Sarah felt her heart drop as curiosity and fear mingled. What could possibly have been uncovered? Would it strengthen their resolve or fracturing their fragile bond? The weight of the impending revelation pressed against her, and she held her breath, ready for whatever unfolded next. Clara rushed ahead, her footsteps echoing against the stone floor of the library. The warm glow of the overhead lights contrasted sharply with the storm still raging outside. But inside, Sarah felt a flicker of hope, even as anxiety clenched her stomach. Clara, wait! Jack called, hurrying after her. Sarah followed closely, trying to keep up with Clara's infectious energy. She could tell that whatever Clara had discovered was important, but the way her heart pounded felt less like eagerness and more like dread. Okay, just a second. Clara paused at one of the tables piled high with books, her eyes sparkling with excitement. You won't believe what I found in the back of the archives. Sarah and Jack exchanged quick glances, both sensing the electric tension between them. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as Clara moved aside a stack of dusty old novels to reveal a weathered, leather-bound book. What is it? Jack leaned closer, peering at the cover. Clara opened it carefully, revealing yellowed pages filled with scrawled letters and notes. These are love letters, but not just any love letters. They were written by someone prominent. I think they're from the original owner of this library, and they're addressed to Clara's voice dropped to a whisper, the mayor of this town. Sarah's heart raced. The mayor? But why would anyone hide these? This is incredible. She felt a stir of excitement. This could change everything for their community. It was a chance to spotlight the library, to make the stories of these passionate people known. Clara nodded vigorously. I know. There are all sorts of accounts of their meetings and how they fell in love during such turbulent times in the town's history. This could connect us to something bigger. As Clara spoke, memories of Jack's confession echoed in Sarah's mind. She once thought she understood the weight of his world, but discovering secrets like these felt monumental. They could unearth hidden truths that might bind the two diverging paths of their lives. But how would they weave them together? Let me see, Jack said, taking the book from Clara with a reverent touch. As he flipped through the pages, the atmosphere shifted. Sarah could feel the tension returning, the weight of their earlier conversation mingling with the revelation of these letters. Jack's brow furrowed. But if this is about the mayor, that could tie back to the people who might be behind the letter we found. What if they don't want this story to come to light? Sarah's heart sank as worry began creeping in again. What if Clara's discovery ignited not just curiosity, but resentment from influential figures? Would they face the very wrath they sought to escape? We have to be careful, she warned. We can't lead with this unless we know for sure what we're dealing with. Sarah's right, Jack agreed, looking more serious than she had ever seen him. The determination of his gaze made her pulse quicken again. We need to find out more before we take any actions. This town has a history that goes deeper than we think. Clara sighed, her excitement dimming slightly. I was hoping this would help us. I thought it'd bring everyone together, not drive us apart. Silence enveloped them as the weight of their fear lingered in the air. Would passion triumph? Or would the truth shatter this fragile moment they'd just begun to create? Jack broke the stillness. Maybe we'll need to dig deeper together. What do you say? Sarah felt a gust of determination rise within her. It was one thing to navigate their own feelings, but unraveling a deeply buried town secret was a leap into the unknown. Yes, she finally said, closing the space between them as if she were grounding herself in his presence. feeling a sense of purpose. Let us uncover the truth behind these letters. Clara's face lit back up. Then let us get started. I'll help however I can. As they set to work, the storm outside rumbled again, seemingly warning them to tread carefully. With every word written in those letters, the past was ready to reveal itself, filled with passion, betrayal and the promise of hope. But as Sarah traced her fingers over the yellowed pages, she couldn't shake the feeling that something much darker was lurking beneath the surface. What if uncovering the truth meant risking everything they had fought for? The thrill of their mission pulsed in the air. But unease settled in her chest. Who would emerge unscathed? Are we ready for this? She whispered to herself as the pages began to turn. Clara leaned over the book, her enthusiasm rekindling. Let us start with these letters. She pointed to a page where the ink was particularly vibrant, each stroke echoing the passion of the writer. Sarah watched as Jack's fingers traced the words, his brow furrowing deeper in concentration. Okay, Jack said, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Let us see what we can piece together. He began reading aloud the opening lines, his voice turning the written words into living whispers. My dearest Eliza, Jack began, his voice soft but filled with reverence. As he read, Sarah felt the atmosphere shift, the storm outside fading into a distant hum. With each line, Clara's gaze flickered from Jack to the letters, her excitement palpable, while Sarah's heart raced at their shared moment. These were more than just words. They were a glimpse into the lives of two people intertwined in love and courage, battling the uncertainties of their time. But part of her felt the weight of responsibility. What if they stood on the edge of a cliff, about to unveil a truth that could topple the precarious balance of their town? She bit her lip, trying to shake off the apprehension. Then Clara interrupted her spiral of worry. Look here, she exclaimed, pointing at a passage. It mentions a secret meeting spot by the river. Jack glanced up, intrigued. We should check it out. If there's a location tied to these letters, it might help us understand the depth of their romance. He turned to Sarah, a spark of adventure lighting his eyes. What do you think? 1,000 thoughts rushed through Sarah's mind, but one truth resonated. This could be the key to connecting the dots between the historical passion and the present-day turmoil they were grappling with. Yes, she said finally, her resolve hardening. Let us visit that spot. Who knows? Maybe it'll lead us to more answers. The trio gathered their belongings, excitement blending with a current of nerve as they exited the library. The storm had started to abate, but the smell of damp earth and rain lingered heavily in the air. The world around them seemed charged, brimming with unspoken promises. As they stepped outside, the gray clouds parted just enough to let a sliver of sunlight dance through, illuminating the path ahead. It felt like a sign, an urging to follow the whispers of history waiting for them by the river's edge. Stay close, Jack cautioned, keeping pace with Clara as they navigated the slick, cobblestone streets. Sarah fell in step beside him, their shoulders brushing. The brief contact sent a jolt of warmth coursing through her, grounding her worries just a moment longer. As they approached the riverbank, the sound of rushing water echoed in their ears, mingling with the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. They arrived at a small clearing where the history of the letters might come alive once more. The air was thick with anticipation. What if? Clara's voice trembled slightly. What if we find more than just a spot? What if we find something that changes how we see everything? I guess we'll have to be ready for whatever that is, Jack replied, glancing at Sarah. His gaze held an unspoken question. Could they handle it? With the river shimmering before them and the shadows of the past looming behind, Sarah felt like they were on the brink of something monumental. The thrill clashed with the anxiety she couldn't quite shake. As they stepped into the clearing, a sudden rustle made them freeze. It wasn't the wind. It was something or someone nearby. Clara whispered, "What was that?" All eyes turned toward the sound. The moment felt suspended, and Sarah's heart raced again as the unknown loomed closer. What if it's someone who doesn't want us to find out? She murmured, the anxiety seeping back in with the challenge dawning on them. The storm within and without continued to swirl. What secrets were concealed? And would they be welcome or resisted? The next moment could change everything, and Sarah could only hope they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. A figure stepped from behind a weathered oak, startling them into silence. It was an older man, his face etched with lines that told stories of their own. He wore a rain-soaked coat, and his eyes narrowed as he assessed the trio before him. "What are you doing here?" he barked, his voice rising above the sound of the rushing river. Jack took a step forward, confidence flowing back into him. "We're just exploring the area. We found some old letters in the library that mention this spot." The man's expression shifted, curiosity mingling with suspicion. "Letters? What kind of letters?" Clara, quick to seize the moment, chimed in. "Love letters. They mention a secret meeting place here by the river. We thought maybe they held some history worth uncovering." The tension weighed heavily in the air. Sarah sensed the shift in the man's demeanor, the flicker of recognition gleaming in his eyes. He hesitated, and for a moment, they shared a silent understanding, an unspoken connection to the past that gripped at their hearts. "I've heard stories about those letters," he said slowly, his tone softening. "There are things that happened here. Things people buried deep to protect their secrets." "What kind of secrets?" Jack pressed, curiosity mingling with urgency. The man shifted on his feet, glancing around as if the trees were listening too. "There were difficult times, trials of love and loyalty. It's easy to romanticize the past, but not all stories end the way we hope." Clara stepped closer, her eyes wide with wonder. "Are you saying that the letters are connected to something larger? We want to know more. We have to know." The man sighed deeply, his chest rising as he took a long breath. "Sometimes the truths we find can be burdens we weren't prepared to carry. Are you sure you want to delve into this?" An unquenchable wave of determination surged through Sarah. This wasn't just about letters anymore. It felt like a quest to dive into history that could illuminate not just the past but their present. "Yes," she said firmly, her voice steady. "We need to know. We need to understand." With a heavy nod, the man stepped closer, revealing a worn leather pouch at his side. "Then you should see this. It may change everything for you." Inside, he pulled out a small, ornate box, its surface weathered with age. Clara gasped as he opened it, revealing an assortment of faded papers and what looked like a locket, tarnished but beautiful. Jack and Sarah leaned in, their breaths caught in awe. "This belonged to Eliza," the man murmured. "Her story is woven into these letters, but it's also connected to the history of this place. And it's not just about love, there's loss, betrayal, and a fight for redemption." The air seemed to thrum with unspoken emotions, their fates intertwining like the letters that had sparked their journey. Clara reached for the locket, her fingers trembling. "What if this reveals something we didn't expect?" Before the man could respond, a shrill whistle pierced through the clearing, halting everyone's breath. From the shadows, a flashlight beam flickered, illuminating the figures in its path. "What's going on here?" a voice demanded, rising from the dark. The moment hung heavy with questions, and Sarah's heart raced. Who else was here? And did they want the same thing they did? Or were they out to protect their own secrets? The piece of history they were clinging to might slip further away, leaving them grasping at uncertainty. Would they be prepared for what was about to unfold next? The stakes had just been raised. The flashlight's beam settled on them, revealing a figure wearing a dark hoodie, his face obscured. Who was this intruder? Sarah felt a rush of vulnerability. They were uninvited guests already faced with one guardian of the past. Now another presence loomed, a deeper threat. "I asked what's going on here?" the voice demanded again, impatience lacing the words. The tension in the air tightened like a drawn bowstring. The older man stepped slightly in front of Clara, shielding her. "Just a moment, son. We're merely sharing some stories of Eliza's past." The newcomer scoffed. "Stories? You think those letters matter? They're just old paper." Clara's grip around the locket tightened. How could he dismiss what felt so sacred to them? She felt a spark of defiance in her heart. "They matter to us," she shot back, her voice steady. "Enough," the man barked. "We're not here to fight. You have no idea the weight of what you're speaking about." For a brief moment, the new figure hesitated. The flashlight flickered, illuminating the anxious faces around him. Something flickered in his eyes, doubt? Curiosity? "What's your connection to her?" he asked, his voice lowering slightly. "You don't seem like the type who gets involved in old love stories." Jack spoke next, his tone earnest. "We found the letters by chance, but they resonate with us. We want to know more." The newcomer shifted, uncertainty etched on his brow. "You think digging through a history like this will bring good?" You're just opening old wounds. The older man exchanged a look with Sarah and Jack, and she saw the tension ease slightly in his posture. Then perhaps it is time for those wounds to heal. Wounds don't always heal, the figure retorted, but his voice lacked conviction. Some things are better left alone. What did they know? Sarah felt the familiar stirring in her gut. The need to press on. Maybe that's true. But we want to learn. There's beauty and pain in every story. Maybe it's what people like us need. The young man stared at Sarah, searching her eyes for sincerity. The air felt electric, humming with a tension that made her heart race. She could almost see the thoughts battling in his mind. Finally, with a resigned sigh, he lowered the flashlight. Fine. I'll listen. Before Sarah could respond, a sudden rustling broke through the trees, drawing their attention. Startled, they turned as a group of shadows emerged behind the newcomer. More voices. More questions. Aren't you all supposed to be at the lodge? What happened? One of them shouted as they stepped closer. The sight was overwhelming. Friends who had been part of their escape, faces filled with confusion and curiosity. Their excitement dropped into the pit of Sarah's stomach. What were they all doing here, intruding on this moment? The young man lifted the flashlight again, illuminating the faces of their friends, then turned back to the older man and Clara. Looks like you're not the only ones eager to hear about Eliza. Tension swirled around them again, thick as smoke. What had seemed like a small adventure was now burgeoning into something larger, something that had attracted all of them, weaving more threads of mystery into the fabric of Eliza's forgotten past. Maybe you should all sit down then, the older man suggested, because there's much more to this story than you realize. Sarah felt her heart pound louder, anticipation swirling in her chest. Together, whether they liked it or not, they were about to confront a history that could change everything. What would they uncover in this tangled web of love and loss? And just how deep would they dare to plunge into Eliza's legacy? As they sat in a loose circle on the damp forest floor, the air hung heavy with anticipation. The young man's flashlight flickered, the beam resting over each face like a spotlight. Sarah could feel nervous energy crackling between them all, binding their fates together in that dimly lit clearing. She glanced at Clara, who looked both eager and terrified, her hand still clutching the locket. The older man drew a deep breath, his voice steady yet tinged with emotion. Eliza wasn't just a name in those letters. She was real, with dreams and fears just like any of us. You all have a piece of her story now. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. And maybe you'll discover something about yourselves in the process. The group fell into a reverent silence, each person wrestling with the enormity of what lay before them. Among them, Sarah felt the pressure of their collective curiosity. What if they uncovered something they weren't prepared for? Clara finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. Can you tell us how you knew her? What was she like? A flicker of a smile crossed the older man's face, reminiscent yet tinged with sorrow. Eliza was a dreamer. Always had her nose in a book, looking for adventure in places most folks ignored. She believed in finding the extraordinary in the everyday. Her letters are filled with passion for a love she thought could never be. Sarah leaned in closer, trying to visualize this woman who had written so beautifully, who had sent her heart out into the world, ink and paper her only means to express deep longing. The flickering torchlight danced shadows across the older man's features, tracing the lines of a life lived with both love and loss. The young man, still wearing his hoodie, asked with cautious intrigue, did she ever find that love? Was it returned? The question pierced the air like a sharp arrow. The older man's expression darkened, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah saw the old wounds reflected in his eyes. Some loves remain unspoken. Eliza's heart held secrets she buried deep. Glances were exchanged among the friends, and Sarah felt the rush of emotions flood her heart. There was so much hunger for understanding and connection in this moment, something raw and unfiltered. Clara's gaze turned toward the surrounding trees. Do you think Eliza found peace? The older man's eyes softened. I believe she tried to make peace with her choices. Even in the pain, she filled her letters with hope. Hope that transcends loss. We all need that. Just then, the sound of a branch snapping broke their reverie, jolting them from their introspection. Sarah's pulse quickened. A whisper of dread crept into the edges of her mind. It was as if the forest itself was warning them. What if unearthing Eliza's past opened doors better left closed? The young man suddenly stood and directed the flashlight toward the sound. "Who's there?" he called, his earlier impatience replaced by urgency. The group shifted uneasily, eyes scanning the darkness around them. Sarah's heart raced as she strained to see through the shadows. The rustling intensified and she didn't just feel fear. She felt a strange sense of foreboding, as if something unacceptable was creeping into their sacred gathering. Then, just out of the beam's reach, a figure emerged from the darkness, another stranger. But this time they weren't lost or curious. They had an air of determination that sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Stop!" the newcomer commanded, voice booming through the stillness. "You shouldn't be here." The group stilled, heartbeats synchronized in rising dread. Who was this person, and why did they look so insistent on keeping them from Eliza's story? Sarah's mind raced, already questioning the implications of this interruption. What secrets about Eliza were lurking in the shadows, waiting to be discovered? What had they stumbled into? And most importantly, would they find out, or would fear drive them apart? The stranger took a step closer, and the beam of the flashlight illuminated his face, a mix of grit and urgency. He looked exhausted, like a man who chased down demons of his own. Sarah's breath hitched. There was something about him that felt familiar, almost haunting. "Who are you?" the young man asked, voice trembling with confusion and a hint of defiance. "Does it matter?" the stranger shot back, his eyes scanning the group like a wary predator. "What matters is that Eliza doesn't want you here. Trust me." There was an awkward pause, the tension thick in the air. Sarah glanced at Clara, who had gone pale, her grip tightening on the locket as if it were a lifeline. The older man stepped forward. "Do you know Eliza? Did you know her personally?" The stranger hesitated, and for a split second, Sarah thought she detected longing on his face before it morphed back into determination. "I knew her well enough," he said, voice low. "She was my sister." Shock rippled through the group. Clara pulled her gaze back from the shadows and blinked hard, as if the revelation might change everything. "Your sister?" she echoed, searching his features for any sign of deception. "Yes," he replied, voice strained. "And she made choices that hurt not just her, but everyone around her. The letters you're so eager to read, their essay reason they're buried in the past. Some things are better left untouched. But we need to know." Sarah blurted out, her heart surging with urgency. "Don't you want to share her story? Maybe it can help others." He shook his head, a protest born of years of grief. "You don't understand. Sometimes digging into the past can unearth pain worse than you imagine. You can't fix back then. You can only carry the weight with you." Each word hung heavily between them, questions swirling. What weight? What secrets? The flickering flashlight, now bathing the clearing in flickering shadows, almost seemed to echo the stranger's sentiment. There was darkness here, a deep-seated sorrow that felt tangible. Clara frowned, stepping forward. "But isn't that the point? To confront that pain? That's what Eliza wanted to be heard." He looked at her, pain etched in his features, and Sarah sensed his resolve slipping. "Maybe. But she also didn't want the truth to break those she loved," he replied softly. Suddenly there was a rustle behind them, followed by the unmistakable sound of hurried footsteps. Sarah turned quickly, her heart in her throat. Had this stranger's arrival brought danger along with it? "Listen," the stranger said urgently, eyes darting again, "you have to go. Now. I don't know how much time we have before they come." "Who?" The words tumbled out of Sarah's mouth, her heart pounding as dread wrapped tightly around her. The stranger started to back away, ready to disappear into the darkness. "The past is a wild thing. It won't let go easily. You have to choose. Face the truth or run while you still can." With that he turned, merging into the woods, the shadows swallowing him whole. The silence that followed was profound. Sarah felt a wave of uncertainty crash over her, churning emotions threatening to spill over. What was the truth they were running toward, and at what cost? In that moment, she felt the weight of Eliza's story heavy, dangerous, and full of decisions that could change everything. The choice before them loomed large, darker than the night around them. "Should we follow him?" the young man finally whispered. Clara shook her head, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "We need to stay and uncover the truth. For Eliza." Sarah's pulse raced, caught between the allure of the unknown and the trepidation that mingled with their tightly knit circle of friends. What lay ahead felt monumental and terrifying. But one question echoed loud and clear. Would they find the strength to confront the story that wanted to say its piece? As the wind rustled through the trees carrying hints of the past, Sarah knew the moment had come to decide. And the decision could change everything. The soft glow of dawn crept through the trees, casting delicate light on the damp ground as the group sat in silence, lingering on the stranger's warning. The air was thick with uncertainty as they processed the weight of his words. In that moment, a sense of resolve washed over Sarah. Eliza's voice had been waiting to be heard for too long. They had ventured too far into the night, drawn by the magnetic pull of the past. "We can't turn back now," she said, her voice steady and firm. Jack met her gaze, an ember of courage igniting in his eyes. "Yes, right about one thing we have to choose. Do we move forward together? Or do we let fear guide our actions?" Clara nodded, holding the locket close, eyes shimmering with determination. "We owe it to Eliza. Not just to understand her story but to own our own." The young man shifted uneasily, glancing over his shoulder into the dark woods. "What if we're just digging up old wounds?" Sarah leaned forward, urgency coloring her words. "Maybe those wounds need the light to heal. Eliza's story might be the key to our own, how she handled love, betrayal, and her choices can guide us in ways we can't imagine." Clara chimed in, "This resonates with all of us. Are we really ready to abandon our search?" A tentative hope was rising. The tension around them paired with the whispers of nature made it feel like the universe was waiting for their choice. The young man took a deep breath, the shadows of uncertainty still looming but intertwined with the warmth of the morning sun. "Okay," he said finally, his voice softened but decisive. "Let us hear the truth." As the group settled, the older man spoke, his expression grave yet respected. "Eliza's letters tell of more than her love. They speak of sacrifice, a battle against societal norms. But they also tell of secrets that some would do anything to keep buried." The group leaned in closer, each feeling the pull of Eliza's legacy intensifying. "What did she sacrifice?" Sarah pressed, curiosity mingled with concern. What were these secrets? Her heart was intertwined with a man much like Jack, he revealed, glancing knowingly at Jack. Eliza loved fiercely, but her family insisted she honor their expectations. She wrote those letters in secret, pouring out her desires and fears onto the page, emotions manifesting between the lines. Torn between duty and love, Jack murmured, empathy flickering across his features. "Exactly," the older man confirmed. But Eliza's choice to hold on to that love came at a price. The town never saw her as anything but the perfect daughter, the model citizen. She felt she had to sacrifice her truth for everyone else's contentment. The younger man sighed, realization dawning. And that's why those letters were hidden away, to protect not just Eliza, but a narrative that suited those in power. "So it's bigger than we thought," Clara breathed, looking at Sarah intently. "How does this tie into our fight for the library?" "It shows us what's at stake," Sarah replied, as if a sudden clarity struck. "Eliza's story can inspire our community to rise up. We are fighting for a space that embraces all histories, even the ones that create discomfort." The older man nodded, pride swelling in his chest. "And for those who dare to listen instead of judge, their actions will echo throughout this community." As the sun rose higher, flooding the clearing with warmth, something else began to shift within Sarah. Standing for Eliza was no longer just about preserving the library, it was about embracing their own voices. In the tumult of emotions, she could feel her heart swelling with newfound strength. Maybe she didn't need to fear the judgment of others, but instead, she could devote herself to the light that could shine through the darkness. "Let us gather the stories together," Jack declared, determination echoing through his words. "Not just ours but everyone's." Eliza's letters are only a small piece of this legacy. "Yes," Clara exclaimed, excitement surfacing. "We can hold a community event. We can share these stories, encourage others to come forward." Together they laid out their plan, each detail igniting their collective passion, an event to showcase Eliza's letters, to rekindle hope, to unify a community that had been torn. It was time to breathe life back into history, but as they were swept away in the current of their mission, the haunting memories of the stranger's warning still lingered. They had decided, And with that choice came the need to tread lightly. Truth was powerful, but it could also unleash chaos. With shared resolve, they made their way back to the library, ready to breathe life into the dormant voices that had waited. Their hearts were intertwined with Eliza's legacy now, embracing the weight and warmth that came with their calling. Together, they stepped through the library doors, transforming what once felt like a refuge into a sanctuary of courage. United their journey, becoming a beacon for others yearning to be seen. As the community came in support of the event, it blossomed in unexpected ways. Sarah could feel Eliza's spirit among them, intertwining their stories, weaving connections across generations. Laughter, tears, and old fears were faced together. Watching from the back of the crowd was Jack, a warm smile on his face. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the connection they had forged felt immense. He understood her fight, and in that understanding a deeper bond formed. When the event concluded, it felt like a celebration of their histories, both light and dark, their paths intertwining with the pulse of life. As the sun set behind the library, glimmers of hope filled the air, a unity forged through vulnerability. As they walked back outside, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them together, the happiness and heartaches that threaded through their lives. Perhaps love stories don't always end happily, she whispered, but they can lead to new beginnings. And as they drifted homeward, bundled in warmth and hope, Sarah recognized that every truth unearthed, every sacrifice made was a step away from fear and towards love. Their stories mattered, deeply and irrevocably, now and forever. Don't wait any longer. Subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will uplift your heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. We want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Show your support now, because this is the moment we all need to rally together. You need to share your journey with others.